Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Metadata Management is Key to Data Governance Initiatives. I would like to start by introducing you to today's speakers. Irene Polikoff is the CEO and co-founder at Top Quadrant. We also have Jack Spivak. Jack is a semantic solutions architect at Top Quadrant. In today's webinar, Jack will introduce the capabilities needed for effective metadata management. He will outline how TopBraid Edge enables a comprehensive but incremental approach to metadata management and overall collaborative data governance by providing a suite of modular packages that can be combined to support your targeted scope of data governance. Irene will then demonstrate metadata management capabilities provided in TopBraid Edge. She will also illustrate how Edge integrates metadata management with other data governance practices, such as management of business terminologies and data warehouse reporting hierarchies, understanding data usage and data requirements, and collaboration across all data stakeholders. Before we get started today, let's review a few logistical items. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along by using your GoToWebinar controls. To post questions, please look on the right-hand side control panel. You should see a drop-down box for questions. If you click on the box, you should be able to post your question at any time during the presentation. We will address as many questions as time allows at the conclusion of the webinar. We will also have a couple of polling questions throughout today's webinar, and we'll be recording today's webinar as well as send a link to the recorded version. With that, I will hand it over to Jack to get started.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Christy. And let's dive right into today's program on metadata management. A few words first about Top Quadrant. We believe that capturing the meaning of information is essential, and our strong commitment to standard-based approaches to data semantics makes this possible. Our mission, simply, is to make enterprise information meaningful. Today's webinar describes one important way to do that by managing metadata and creating connections across silos. We work with a variety of enterprise clients across different industries, and several customers in the financial services sector aren't shown here. Financial services is a significant focus area for data governance and metadata management because of the complexity and its compliance requirements. We're going to be using an example from that industry today. So to get oriented before jumping into the product demo, I want to talk briefly about metadata. What is metadata and why is it important? And what are some of the challenges involved in managing it? And especially, how do semantic standards fit in to help address these challenges? Afterward, Irene will demo how we do this in TopBraid Edge and how Edge helps. So, what is metadata? The simple answer is it's data about data. And you can see some typical characteristics that people capture about data here, the origin, definitions, security policies, etc. But actually, it's not quite so simple, because sometimes one person's data might be another's metadata and vice versa. And more significantly, it's related to context. There's many different contexts. You can see here examples in business, technical, and operational context. And there's many different associated types of metadata. What's important is that you can capture all of it and use it to drive value in the enterprise. But before I get too deep into metadata, I want to back up for just maybe 1 minute and say a word about meaning. It's probably fair to say that all of us here are involved with information and decision-making in one way or another. And it's probably fair to say that we could agree that good information in general is better than bad. And of course, we all know that's easy, right? Well, or not so much. We've all made bad decisions, and some of us have even learned that we want to make better ones. There's a saying that knowing the good information that a tomato is a fruit doesn't really mean that we should be putting it in a fruit salad, at least not if we want the intended outcome. So there's something here. It's not just good information, but meaningful information that's needed. If I hear thunder and see dark clouds, inside this might mean a cup of tea and a good book. Outside means something else entirely. In a classroom, this might mean one thing. Here, quite a different meaning. And we can't make good decisions about what to do without information about the information we're receiving. So meaning is about metadata. Making meaningful metadata available, metadata that's accurate, timely, and relevant is critical for good decision making. So I've talked about why good information isn't enough for good decision making and that meaningful information is needed. Well, why is metadata so important? It's because the meaning that's so important is actually carried in the metadata. Metadata answers important questions like the ones you see here. Who uses it? What are the limitations of its use, etc.? And the meaning it provides cuts across departments, systems, and silos. Managing this metadata means more than accurately cataloging values for it. It means making its meaning useful, that is, available, timely, and correct for stakeholders needing shared understanding of enterprise information. So here's an example. And in this example, metadata describing which fields are personally identifiable information is missing and causes confusion. This is a major area of work for enterprises worldwide now because of many of the regulations that are beginning to be placed, like GDPR in Europe. And the people in this illustration don't know what data to protect or the risks of non-compliance. They're missing the answers to key questions on the previous slide. They don't know what the customer ID or other fields mean in the context of regulatory compliance. They need meaningful metadata to make good decisions, and a shared understanding of the meaning is essential to its effective use and governance. So how do we do that? That's where semantics comes in, and at Top Quadrant, we're deeply committed to semantic information management. Semantics is about capturing meaning to make it available for good decision making, simply and flexibly, just like ordinary sentences. Semantics describes the things that we care about and how they relate to each other. Things and relationships. It's language. Having a common language makes communication possible, and semantic standards are a common language. Semantic standards were designed to represent two key types of metadata, and if you're going to have a metadata-driven solution to make your data meaningful, then you better be able to capture both types. We need to understand what something is and what something relates to. Well, if you want meaningful metadata, the semantic standards were designed just for that. Today, as a result of a 15-year effort by the W3C, a collection of standards enable the capture and communication of meaning. How? Well, these W3C standards stack together in a system that allows us to say things, to share a common vocabulary, to infer some things about what we're saying, to be able to ask about what's been said, and finally, to be able to verify all of this with rules. So given that this is possible, why manage your metadata semantically? Well, here are just a few of the priorities that require correct and meaningful metadata. For these purposes that you see here, we need metadata to connect the business, technical, and operational aspects of informational assets into a single data landscape. But there's many ways to do this, and many systems for doing this, and some are not as complete as others. Semantic metadata management focuses on the relationships that assemble and glue together today's enterprise information landscape. The standardization of semantics finally allows us to capture meaningful metadata, and perhaps more important, to talk in a common language about our data across systems for business understanding. Well, if human beings are the glue that connects this variety in the data, it's not going to be easy. And beyond that, it'll be expensive, slow, and error-prone. Metadata can vary with different information departments and business needs or more. And some metadata may not even be known yet. Organizations must have systems, flexible and extensible systems, in place to capture meaning of all types of data, today's data and tomorrow's data. And this is where TopRate Edge comes in. Edge provides flexibility and meaning with semantic metadata management. How do we provide this capability in Edge? TopRate Edge uses the simple notion of assets to capture and organize diverse enterprise metadata. This pre-built and easy to understand framework provides standard asset modules for business, technical, and operational metadata. Edge then allows you to map your organization's actual diverse information assets to this rich, standardized data model. These mappings organize your information for understanding, and they can be easily extended or customized as needed with modular packages that you see here on the left. So in just a moment, you'll see Irene use Edge to do exactly these sorts of mappings to make meaning available in an actual banking example. As a holding company, TopBank Corporation needs to report quarterly to the Federal Reserve about its financial health. The Federal Reserve's Form FR-Y9C and its supporting schedules, just like our tax returns, collect information about income and assets. TopBank Corp has various databases with tables and columns containing data about its holdings, and Irene will be showing how Edge captures descriptive metadata in standardized data, technical, and enterprise asset collections. More importantly, she'll be showing how Edge associates metadata relating data elements to the forms and software that use them for TopBank's compliance activities. By managing relational metadata, the meaning of each step in TopBank's reporting process is preserved, and TopBank can ensure accuracy and the lineage of their reporting. But before I hand you off to Irene for the demo, we're going to take just a few seconds here for a quick poll. Christy?
Thank you, Jack. As I mentioned earlier, we would appreciate your feedback on a few quick polling questions. We're going to do one polling question now, and we'll do two others right after Irene's demo. We will share the results of each question so that you can see how your peers responded. So if you'll please take a look to your screen to answer the following question. Thank you, Jack. What does your organization use today to collect or manage metadata? Please select all that apply. Spreadsheets, modeling tools for business processes, ER, objects, for example, EA, Irwin, Embarcadero, catalogs within an ETL, such as Talend, data cleansing tools, such as Trillium, or BI products, such as Spotfire. Metadata repositories, such as Rashad or Adaptive, and finally, integrated data governance solutions. So we'll give a second for everyone to respond. Okay, Jack, it looks like everyone may have entered a response. So if we want to close the poll.
Okay, Christy.
And share the results. Okay, there you go. Interesting. 78% are spreadsheets, and it looks like modeling tools and catalogs are the second and third option. Thank you so much for taking that quick poll, and we will continue with Irene's demo. Irene?
Thank you, Christy. Start presenting. Do you see my screen now?
Yep.
All right, let me start by orienting you a little bit in this environment. What you see is a home page of TopRate Edge. As Jack was describing, it's a pretty rich and comprehensive environment. And we manage in it different types of assets, which are organized in collections of like asset types, as you see on the left. So, data asset collections, for example, have information about databases, data sets, etc., glossaries, organized glossary terms, enterprise asset collections, let you see things like forms, schedules, maybe organizational capabilities, and so on. Technical assets collections are about applications, infrastructure, servers. All of this different information connect together because the meaning, as we talked about it, is about connections. And TabRate Edge is a highly configurable environment, so these types of collections that we see here can be configured to show more or show less. In fact, I'm not showing everything, and new collection types can be added. The other things that I'm seeing here are tasks that are assigned to me, and when task gets created to support collaboration and workflows, I get notification in the email, but I also conveniently see it here on the home page. Let me go in data asset collections and see what kind of collections I have here. So our example will be focusing on TabRate Bancorp. So I see that collection, but I also see some others. I'm logged in as administrator, and as administrator, I could manage everything. But in general, this is organized by the kind of things that you could see, the kind of things that you could edit, and the kind of things that you could manage. In fact, in a different browser, I am logged in as a different user, and you see that that user, Irene, only have access to two data asset collections. So this is a navigational view that is based on the type of collections. I could also filter it by tags that indicate whether it belongs to a certain data domain or whatever other categorization we may want to have. And if I wanted to have a cross-cutting view, I could click here on the Find Asset Collection. In fact, I have it open in another window. And here you see that I have 8 different collections that deal with banking, and some of it is about enterprise assets such as forms and schedules, glossaries, my data assets, etc. If I wanted to have that kind of view as my main view in the system, I could do that as well. And here we also see some metadata. This is a metadata that is actually about collections themselves, such as name, identifier, who is responsible, etc. So it's a different kind of metadata. But let me close out of here and go back to my data asset collection and take a look what type of data assets I have there. So as I've already mentioned, this is data databases, data sets, even logical models like logical attributes and entity, and of course physical models such as tables, columns, etc. I have a few databases here, and if I wanted to look at all the columns across everything, I could do that, which is what I just did in the navigation. So you see there's quite a number of them, and then let me look at one of them. It's an account number. So far, the kind of metadata I see here is very akin to the data dictionary. And that's, whether it's a primary key, physical data type, and so on. And that's natural because it actually was imported from a database, and that's the type of information we have. I could navigate across going to the table that this column belongs to, and you see it has 2 columns. And if I go to the customer name, we see some additional metadata. The metadata that is managed only by this environment, of course, it cannot come from the database itself. Things like criticality, data quality, mapping to a logical attribute. So here we see one type of connection. And there's even more metadata fields available to me. I could see them once I click on edit, but actually I have a task that's assigned to me to make some changes. So why don't I go back to my homepage and actually work on that task, which is asking me to connect this securitization exposure field to a glossary term. So this is where I am going to click on edit and actually make my edit, and also see what other metadata is available to me. It's quite a rich collection of things that has to do with statuses, with documentation, compliance, traceability, governance in terms of who is responsible, accountable, etc. for this particular data elements, whether it's critical and so on. So what I wanted to do is map it to the glossary term. And if I don't know whether the appropriate glossary term exists or not, I could, of course, go directly to the glossary and check it there. But I could also search for it. And let me see, so what we have about securitization, and in fact, we have a few things, and here's one that seems to be the right one. So I'm gonna connect to that. Or I could have used an autocomplete and just started typing AFS securitization, and the pull down list would come up for me. So let me save that change. And you see that it maps to the glossary term. Also, if I wanted to, by the way, all my changes are audit trailed. So if I wanted to see a history of my changes, I could see that and see that this was just added by me on the date, and I could revert the change and so on. So we saw that there is a rich amount of metadata available, and all of it is included in the models that are shipped with TopBright Edge. The models are very rich, as you've seen, and however, when you use it in any organization, no matter how much you think through those models, there will always be something special an organization may want to capture that we have not thought about, something that's unique to them, something that's different. Maybe some of the fields that are available here, not every organization wants to use that. So Edge is a highly configurable environment, and the way it's configured is through ontology models. That's another type of asset collections, your ontologies, classes, properties. And I could navigate here to the ontologies, any ontologies that I manage, including ontologies that actually configure and customize metadata in TopBright Edge itself. So I have one here already, but I also have it open in the window, and I'm going to go there. So this is metadata about my metadata, so essentially a meta model of TopBright Edge. Uses W3C standards that Jack has mentioned. And here are all the different types of data assets. I want to make changes to the columns, so I could look it up, that class of columns. So here are columns, database columns, and some information about available about it. I want to add a new field. So there is already some identifiers, but let's say my organization has some specialized identifier that is additional. And I'm going to create a field that is just called special identifier. And let's make it an integer. I'm going to save that. Now, what I want to do, I want to place it in some section on the form. And the way I do this is by creating this shape for that. And in the shape, I could create some additional information. So, for example, I could put it in the property group. Those are the sections on the form. And I could, let's say, restrict its value. For example, I could say that it has to be between 10 and 1,000. So I'm going to save that change and go back to where I was and see if I could use this new field. I'm going to click on edit again. And let's say, did I do this correctly? Let's see. Interesting. I tried it 3 times before. It must be a demo syndrome, but let me assure you that it does indeed work, and I should have had a new column appear. So I'm going to investigate why it didn't show up. But in the meantime, let me see what other connections I have. So this this particular field, a particular database column, is used in the technical asset collections, and I could see that it's actually used as a relationship in a program, which is in the technical asset, an SQL script. So I want to see more about it, and I'm going to click here and navigate to my technical asset collection, where I just have 3 different programs. So you see that this program has inputs and outputs, and it's an SQL kind of stored procedure. And I could have information about it here. And I could also explore, since it's about inputs and outputs, I could also explore it visually in this neighborgram type of visualization. It shows it in a diagrammatic view. So we see that this SQL script has inputs, it has some outputs, and if I wanted to clean up this view a little bit and don't show the type or executable type, I could do this, and I could further explore relationships and just walk this graph of connections through the visual navigation. So that's another kind of information that is captured here about applications and how they use data sources as inputs and outputs. Yet another type of information is enterprise assets, such as forms, business capabilities, and so on. I do have one of those open here. So let us take a look at it. These are various schedules that our fictitious bank uses to report information to the Federal Reserve Board. So we see this is one of the reporting forms, FRY9C. It has a number of schedules, and I could navigate to those and see one of them, and also see if it's used any place, because one of the important questions for me could be, oh well, how is that schedule actually produced? And the way it's produced is captured in a lineage model that describes how various inputs and outputs flow through programs and applications and produce that schedule. So I have that connection available to me as well. Now, one of the things to mention about this environment that it's primarily for the data stewards or people involved in managing metadata, technical architects, business architects, and so on. There's search capabilities across the environment, and this could provide a simplified view to publish information to the broader enterprise. So if I wanted to just search here for, let's say, securitization, I could get a search view, and that view is something that everyone, not just data stewards, but everyone in our organization could use. We could configure what's available in the search, and this allows a simplified view across all the assets that are managed in this environment. So what I could do is click on it to see more information, what kind of information I could see, and in general how search works is configurable here as well. So let me try that configuration and hope that it works better for me this time. So if I wanted to configure my search, I could set what collections are available for searches. I could set how they're available for search. I could set what shows up in the detail view. Here, let me just add additional facet. For example, physical data type as a facet. And if I go back to search and just refresh it, see what happens. So you could see that now I have another facet available. And there are other additional configurations that I could make. Now, this environment could be used not just to see information, but also make comments about information. And if I have appropriate level of access, I could drop down to the type of information that, to the really much more detailed view. Like, for example, if I wanted to see this glossary term within the entire glossary, I could navigate to it from there. And, all right, there we go. So here I went to my glossary. With my glossary terms, I could see them hierarchically in a tree. So different types of exposure, including securitization exposure. So there is a variety of the access points and navigation mechanisms that are available here. And as I mentioned before, from the search environment, we could also make comments. So if I'm going to make a comment here, but I could have made it from the search environment. So if a broader enterprise users who only have access to search wanted to say something about, let's say, definition of this term is incorrect, please take a look at something. They could do that here as well, and that comment goes to the stewards, and they could then see the comment here and make appropriate changes, initiate the change workflow, and complete their job as needed. There is also rich metadata about the attributes, about the glossary terms themselves. So if I wanted to click edit here, we could see what kind of metadata is available for a glossary term, and you can see there's quite a bit here also. Jack, was there something else that you wanted me to show? Because I think I have a little bit more time. So if there is anything else that I need to show, I could quickly do that.
To show about the glossary, or in general for the demo?
More general for the demo.
Irene, what about importing? Sorry, Jack, importing or talking about importing? Someone was asking about
very good question, Christy. And yeah, so let's take a look at how I could import data. There's a variety of import features that are available to me, and they depend on the type of the asset. For example, for the data asset collections, I could bring data from the DDL file, from JDBC collection, from a spreadsheet. For other type of collections, importing it from DDL wouldn't make sense. So there is a variety of configurable importers. There's also a variety of exporters that I could use for data asset collections. For example, I could export JSON schema in and use that to produce Avro, for example, for the big data assets.
Could you talk about glossaries specifically, Irene?
So primary imports would be from your spreadsheets, and you could also import RDF files into glossaries as well. Or you could import the spreadsheet, and there, if I had the spreadsheet to be selected, I could then map the columns from the spreadsheet into properties for my glossary model. So the import capability is actually quite configurable. So if you have any spreadsheet, irrespective of its structure, we could always map the columns and import not just relationships, not just attributes, but also relationships that are being used.
What are some of the importers? We talk about what are some of
So
the importers.
with that, I think we'll probably pass back to Jack to maybe show some of the additional features that I didn't cover, and also to answer questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Irene. And before we do that, just going to run another couple of quick polling questions here. And Christy?
Okay, thank you, Jack. Please take a quick look to your screen, and we'll just do 2 quick polling questions before we go back to Jack to finish out a few slides. So the next polling question you should see on your screen: what best describes how happy you are with your current state of metadata management? So you'll see several choices: unsatisfied with the current solution, but you don't have any plans to improve it; unsatisfied, but expect to start an initiative to improve it in the next 6 months; unsatisfied with the current solution and evaluating alternatives right now; currently implementing a new solution; are satisfied with your current solution. So if you just want to, okay, I think we're good to wrap that up. Okay, if you want to share the results, Jack. There you go. Okay, so a little bit all over the place. Several unsatisfied are currently implementing, and 28% are satisfied. Okay, let's go to the next polling question briefly. Jack, if you don't mind sharing that.
No,
okay.
There you are. Should be up.
What is your biggest issue with your current metadata management capability? So which of these are you not able to do well currently? So see an integrated view across metadata for all sources, including structured and unstructured databases and big data lakes. Connect all types of metadata, including technical, business, and operational. Easily extend the environment by creating user-defined attributes, new metadata types, and APIs. Ensure access and collaboration across technical and business stakeholders, or use metadata for impact analysis to facilitate integration or to identify redundant sources, etc. Okay, just give a couple more seconds. Folks are still coming in with their response. Okay, all right, Jack, I think you can share.
Jack, could you pass back to me? Actually, I figured out what was wrong with my customization, so I could show the attributes working and
Sure.
the value range working as well. So.
Okay, so I think everyone's had a chance to look at the results of that poll. So thank everyone for taking a few seconds to do that for us, and I think we'll hand it back to Irene.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, so what was the problem was that I actually didn't include my customization, so which I did now while we were doing those polls. So you see now that the special identifier showed up, and let me try to use this field. I'm intentionally going to make a mistake and enter 5 here, because remember I had that rule that it has to be between, I think, 10 and 1,000. So let me try to save the change, and you could see how that rule is working. So there is data quality and protection aspect to the environment as well. It will try to prevent me from entering incorrect values. So I'm gonna cancel out of here. With that, Jack, back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Irene. I'm glad you were able to get that taken care of. Coming in, talked a little bit about metadata in general. Irene's showed you Edge's ability to handle metadata. Edge's metadata is actually situated in a larger governance framework. As a result, there's a lot of capability in Edge that we don't even begin to have the time to cover. So Irene pointed out that she was administrator and showed what it was like as a different user in a different browser interface. Just pointing out that because it's a web-based system, we naturally have role-based access controls, and this goes down to a very granular level to the system as a whole or to the individual asset collections that we've been working on. We also have both production and working copies. Production is what you might expect if the metadata that you've been managing needs to be made available to other people or systems. You want that live and running on a regular basis. But if you need to be editing it or developing it or putting it through an approval process, we have these working copies, which are virtual copies of the production vocabulary created specifically for editing purposes. And those working copies can go through an approval process, can be frozen, rejected, approved, and committed to production. And this can be cyclical. It's very, very flexible. The entire platform, not just the metadata management, offers full multilingual support, and we have dictionaries running in the background. You can see here in the example that we can have preferred labels in a variety of different languages. Irene just showed you a bit about our data quality rules and validation, and without getting into it too deeply, these apply to all of the different kinds of information governed by Edge, not just metadata. And these can be, there's standard ones like this that came with the product, or they can be configured entirely from a custom perspective with business rules that could apply to different departmental policies and security policies and all. The compliance of your data with these policies that you might create can be reflected in dashboards inside the Edge software. We look at completeness, how the description's changing, the validity over time, see where you are in your processes. And then finally, and this is a huge, huge area, Edge allows for, because it's a server-based product, it allows for integration with other systems. So it may not just be individuals who are looking for metadata about information. There may be systems that are requiring that. You can see on the lower right here, you could have this integrated with a data warehouse, with portals like search portals, other in-house applications, for example, in finance or sales. And all of the data is centrally stored in Edge's repository. The screen that you see really is just a user interface interacting back and forth with the repository that is part of the server system. And as a result, we can access that directly from third-party systems through SPARQL query access or through Java messages or directly through web services, many of which are automatic in the system. So enough about that. There's an enormous amount here available in the details if you want to hear more about that. Just to wrap it up, TopRate Edge uses assets, these data assets and technical assets, to capture and organize an enterprise's diverse metadata in a pre-built, easy-to-understand framework. It stores a variety of this descriptive metadata, and even more important, it captures the relational metadata for assembly into an entire landscape. We do that with packages. We mentioned them casually before. Each of these contains different assets that you might want to work with, and they support an incremental approach to governance. You can start with any of them and add them in any combination. In summary, TopRate Edge, because of its semantic foundations, offers an enormous amount of flexibility and extensibility. You saw Irene add a piece of metadata that wasn't even thought about initially. These models, we have both pre-built and user-defined models, and we can make connections between all of these. So with that, I think we're about ready for questions, Christy.
Thank you, Jack. And if you haven't already, please submit your questions and discussion points in the question box located in the right-hand side control panel. We've got a couple of questions here that we're going to start with. First one here is, it seems like you have a lot of different types of assets and some different packages to consider. Where or with what do your customers mainly start? Irene?
Well, that really differs. We have some customers who have very precise goals. For example, they want to manage reference data, and they just use that package. And later on, they could expand, or they just want to do business glossaries, or they just want to do metadata. And that's the package they start with. They could always add to that. They could create also their own asset collection types. Some customers are not quite sure where they're going to start, so they just license a combination of packages, and then they could enable and disable and combine them in any way they'd like to. So there is a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of variety in the customer use cases, depending on what exactly their focus is. I can't say that there's one determinate path, and that's fine because the system is flexible enough to support whatever journey one starts with.
Right. Thank you, Irene. Let's take this question. You showed creating data assets within TopRate Edge. What happens when database schemas change?
That's a very good question. So I showed some import capabilities that Christy asked me about, and you saw that information gets imported from the database schemas themselves, typically. Although some customers may want to import this information from a modeling tool such as Irwin, if they do logical and physical model in those tools. But so it's a combination of places that they import data from. Now, imports can be done on repeated basis because metadata does change. I mean, database schemas don't change quickly, but they do change. So when you run the second import, what gets imported is delta. So if something has changed, let's say a new column has been added, then that information gets imported. Now, everything that was entered in Edge itself, such as this additional metadata that I was showing, like criticality, personal information indicator, or how it's used in applications, all of that gets preserved. So the subsequent imports do not override it in any way. They just only bring with them the changes that came from the source environment.
Okay. Thank you, Irene. Here's one other question that I think we should take. Someone's asking how we are different than Collibra, and I think that's a great question. It's probably something that requires a more extensive response, and we'd love to continue to chat with you about that. However, one key way that we are different is that we are based on semantic standards. Irene, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about what that means. I know we've covered some of that in today's presentation, but I think that is a key message that we want to get across is what semantic standards can do for you, and that is flexibility and customization. Irene, would you add anything else to that?
Well, yes. So it is based on standards, and there's increasingly organizations in all industries are starting to use W3C standards for developing their own custom ontologies or reusing industry standard ontologies, for example, FIBA in the financial industry. And because it's standards-based, you could just very seamlessly add it to our environment. And it also means that a variety of other standard interfaces are available in terms of dereferencing any item, any asset that is managed in TabRate Edge. By that, we mean using its unique identifier, its URI, to fetch information about it, and to go from the information about one asset to the information about another asset. Also, you saw me load first unsuccessfully to extend the meta model behind this environment. And in doing that, I was just using standard ontology modeling approaches where I create classes and I create properties and I connect them. So all of that is standards-based. You don't need to learn a proprietary object model or object modeling approach that may be in a tool such as Collibra, and it interoperates with anything else that is standards-based. And you could reuse skills. So if you have ontology modelers who are trained on this technology, you could use that. And the other point of it, that the environment has been built from the ground up to operate in a heterogeneous setting. It's very flexible. It has a rich set of extensible models behind it that covers a very broad spectrum of asset collections, and rich even in a sense that you saw me, for example, adding a rule. So that about the identifier being between 100 and 1,000. That rule language is also using W3C standards. There's a query language where all the information can be queried, and you could create template those queries to create web services. That's also based on a standard query language called Sparkle for querying graph databases. So importance of standards, how we leverage standards, flexibility, richness. When you use standards like that, there is much greater chance that lots of things have been thought through. For example, the type of rules that I could add, the overall scope of the language is quite broad because it's based on the requirements from many organizations of the kind of metadata and information they want to capture and connect.
Okay. Thank you, Irene. We are pretty much at the end of time, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. We had quite a few questions, and we will be responding to those questions, so look for that in your email for that response. And also, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, we will be providing a link to the recorded presentation as well as slides. Thank you so much for your attention and your interest in today's webinar, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.